welcome everyone. This is the second industry talk of the year from Playmakers. So here we have Luella Moore and Peak Distapan from South by Southwest Sydney, and this is their talk from graduation to a career in indie games. So how this will be structured is I'll get Luella and Peak, I'll get both of you to introduce yourselves first. Just talk about your professional history and your careers and what you're both doing now, and then I'll let you take the stage with the presentation. Afterwards, there should be some time for some live questions, and what I'll do is there is this Google form for anyone currently in the call to submit questions. So if you go to verified stage chat, there is the form there. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Great. Luella, do you want to start?
Yeah, do you want cameras on for this, or do you want to go cameras off?
We'd appreciate cameras on, please.
Great.
Too easy. Okay, yeah, so my name is Luella Moore. I've met a bunch of the people who've been in Playmakers in my role at South by. So I'm the Games Festival Manager. But I actually come from a long line of degrees and attempted to start and didn't finish degrees. So I started in arts and I made my way through 3 or 4 museums into a role where I became a producer effectively. So I went from tech and science education into event planning, event management, and production. So it wasn't really anything to do with what I studied. And I think you'll find that most people in events did not study events. But effectively, in a role as a producer, I started building my network through arts originally. So a lot of musicians, and then actual artists, painters, and like classical artists. And then it moved into all these different realms from architecture and science to working with game developers. So I started doing game development kind of major events with the Powerhouse Museum. And after putting on the largest game event in New South Wales in like 20 years, I was lucky enough to get a job at South by. And in this role, I effectively manage everything within the Games Festival schedule, calendar, and program. With the exception of the showcase. So from year 2, I moved more distinctly into conference. I work a lot with investors, publishers, state agencies, federal agencies, investment agencies, and pretty much put together a program for South by. Seen you guys before, do a lot of work with students, a lot of work with emerging talent and career. Pretty much focusing on investment, programming, parties, events, and that's kind of me.
And I'm Peak Distapan, and my background is a little more chaotic, but again, like Luella said, in events and also in games, you'll find that everyone has really different backgrounds that aren't necessarily a linear like career path. And honestly, I think that makes this industry and a lot of other similar creative industries much stronger for it. I've done all sorts of things. I've been a tour guide. I've been a print manager at a framing place. I've done social media for Char Time. I have been the global content manager for a pet supplement company. But during this time, I was also the senior organizer for a little community group called Sydney Gamers, which is still around, but I'm no longer involved with them. Where I put on a lot of gaming community events, organized a lot of Mardi Gras floats. One of the last things I did before stepping down was doing a collaboration between Sydney Gamers and Square Enix, doing a Final Fantasy themed Mardi Gras float a couple years ago, right before COVID hit. I left it at a good time. But I'm also an artist, an illustrator. In my spare time, I'm a hobbyist game maker as well. I'm just dabbling a little bit in there. And my current role at South by Southwest Sydney is as games program producer, where my main responsibilities lie with the game showcase, which is the largest indie game showcase in Australia. Last year, we had 120 games ish in the main showcase, 20 games in the student showcase, and some games from publisher showcases and traveling road shows, which put us well above 150 in our showcase last year. And what I do for the showcase is mainly outreach and curation. So if you've ever submitted a game to South by Southwest Sydney, I have definitely played it. Luella and Luke may have played it, but I have definitely played it. A lot of what I do year round when we're not immediately preparing the festival, and let's be honest, we're always preparing the festival. I am just on the hunt for cool new indie games. I was just in Perth looking at some cool stuff, and week prior to that, I was in Melbourne. I have some freelance gigs which give me the opportunity to travel around Australia, which make my job a lot easier because then I get to meet local developers and chat to people and figure out like what's going on in every indie scene.
Okay, that's what we do. I should also mention as well, I've just launched the State of Play New South Wales game development advocacy board. So I'm working a lot on researching the state of indie studios and game development in New South Wales as a comparison to other states and other major game ecosystems, including places like Toronto, Poland, the UK, and working out how to advocate for New South Wales developers and indie devs in particular to ensure that they have better access to things like funding, grants, support networks, and internships and resources. So a lot of my work at the moment is with the State of Play New South Wales board. Should we jump into our kind of chat for tonight? Peak, do you mind sharing?
Yes. Let me just make this screen happen. Great. All right. So welcome to our talk. Luella, if you would like to begin.
Yeah, so we're giving you our background. Effectively, what we're going to be talking tonight is about the structure and the methods and the things to keep in mind when you're making an indie game and you're building a studio at the same time. It's never really one or the other. You're kind of always building games and you're always building your studio, and it's a reiterative process. So if anyone's ever done engineering, it's just iteration, iteration, iteration. We're going to talk about four major things. We're talking about why are you making a game? What are the things to keep in mind? Who you're working with and who your network is. And then we're going to deep dive into the how of what that actually looks like. So we're going to get a little bit granular in some of these subjects. And then if you've got any questions, feel free to chuck them in the little list and we'll answer them later. But I'm going to pass over to Peak to talk about why.
Great. So everyone get ready. We're going to get a little bit existential for a second while I'll ask you, why are you making a game? Some of you might know the answer to this. Some of you might not. It's a very existential question for me. And I think it's important to start there about why you want to be making games. A lot of people have this mentality of wanting to make a game because you like games. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that as a motivation, but you need to go deeper than that. I want to make a living off of games. See, that's more specific. I want to work on a game. Again, slightly, it's similar to making a living off of games, but different. Or you just want to express an idea or tell a story. There's way more motivations for making games, but these are just some examples of a more informative approach to the question why you want to make games. You need to ask yourself, you want to make something? Does it need to be a game? Are you making a game because you can only make a game? Could your idea or concept or project be better served in a different medium? If you make the wrong call on that, that's life. You're going to learn from it, and you're going to make cool art either way. But it's important to make these decisions early on because they will affect your game making process. So the most important thing is to set expectations. You need to establish your goals and set your expectations, and that will affect how you approach making your game. So for example, if we go with the example motivations, if you want to make a living off of games, you're going to have to be prepared to do a lot of things that aren't making a game, like setting up a business, learning about legal things, probably learning how to pay people properly. And if you just want to make games, that you may find yourself spending more time running a studio than making a game, and some developers aren't prepared for that. If you want to work on a game, not necessarily making your own game, you need to think to yourself, well, what are you good at? What can you do? And does it need to be you that's making a game? Maybe you would be better served joining an existing studio and honing your craft there before you decide that you're ready to make your own game. And if you want to make games just as a form of creative practice, that's great. That's awesome. Maybe games isn't your job, but it's a hobby. That's how I approach game making. While I work in games, I have no plans to be a career game developer because, to be honest, I like money. But it's more that I'm not prepared to. I don't see myself doing that as a full-time job, and making games is a full-time job. So in establishing your expectations, you need to define what does success look like, and that can look like a lot of different. Getting a publisher. It could just be having a passionate player base who talk about your game, or just the creative accomplishment of making a game. So, for example, you could set a goal like, I want to ship a game that makes enough money to fund my next game with assistance from a funding body. This is a very achievable goal in games, especially in Australia. But knowing that that's what you want versus just want to make a game because it's fun. My housemate did a game design degree many years ago because he finished high school and thought, what should I do? I need to do a degree. I like video games. What if I did game design? He did it for a couple of years, decided it was too difficult, and now he's an accountant. He still loves games, but he's just decided that that's not for him. And this circles back to what I mentioned earlier about how games is an industry that doesn't have a lot of linear career progression. So you should just enjoy that. I enjoy a lot of my weird jobs that I've had in the past all become very relevant to my everyday work professionally. I've never not had a job that didn't have important skills that I could bring to another job. A great example of this in indies is I recently met in Adelaide a brand new game developer who's making a stunning point-and-click adventure with hand-drawn animation, and she comes from advertising and animation. So it's her first time making an indie game, it's first time making games, but her game looks stunning because she's honed her craft in something else that she's really passionate about. So, instead of starting an indie studio, you might want to work on your game making skills by working in an existing studio or even doing AAA work. In Australia, if you're working at a AAA studio, you'll likely be working on things like a mobile game for existing IPs, porting, external development, but all of that teaches you professional skills and improves your craft. And just don't worry. A lot of people around uni age tend to worry about like, oh, my life isn't going exactly as I'd planned it. I should be doing this right now or this right now. Let yourself go along for the ride. You'll figure it out eventually. So the next question you have to ask is, what is your game? So I won't spend too much time on this because a lot of you probably spend a lot of time doing this already, but it's important to lay this foundation. What kind of game do you want to make? What kind of game are you interested in making? And understanding that part of the ideation process is what informs the rest of your process. For example, the way you would approach making a game that's mechanically led, for example, like a Balatro, would be completely different from a way you would approach making a game that's more narrative led, like a Stray Gods. And that would change the way that you ideate your game, play testing, how you build your game, and so forth. Is it a twist on an existing game or genre? This gives you avenues for research and comparison. If it's something completely new and fresh, that's cool and exciting, but you need to figure out if it can succeed. You always have to ask yourself, is it feasible? Both in a business sense, whether a game will economically work, make it, and succeed, but also artistically. If you set out to make this game, can you do it? Are the ideas working? Is it going to work? A lot of people have this idea of their dream game. It's the game you've already dreamt of making. It's the culmination of your passions and interests. Take that idea, think about it, and then put it on a shelf. You shouldn't make that game yet. You will eventually. You might start working on it and then work on something else. But in my opinion, it is better to just make more games and put them out there. Your dream idea will always be waiting, and you can come back to it when you have the skills to make it. And of course, your idea can and will evolve over time, and that's okay. That's a part of the process. So after you have your idea, you need to work on your strategy. This, of course, is linked to your goals. For example, asking yourself whether or not your game is viable in the market is very important if you are trying to succeed economically. You need to look at how successful similar games are in the same genre. A lot of genres that are popular are very popular and do very well. For example, your Vampire Survivors likes, but the market is extremely saturated with them. A lot of them are being picked up by publishers and will probably never succeed. But that's how the market works. One of them will rise to the top. You need to figure out who your audience is, whether you're trying to go for that global market or if you're just going for a more local thing. A lot of games that focus on Australian themes and concepts will be looked upon favorably by government funding bodies in Australia, like Screen Australia. But if you look at any successful game or successful indie that's come out of Australia, they very rarely have any cultural odor, for lack of a better word. It's often a surprise to people globally that Australian games are Australian, the ones that do well at least. And then also your audience also determines, like, different genres have different sorts of audiences who will respond to different sorts of things. And whether your game is more of a mainstream game or an indie breakout hit will also determine the way you approach your game making process and whether it's viable. There's lots of questions to ask when you are making a game, like game design, development timelines. But again, that's all stuff you're probably familiar with. But I want you to think about more of these businessy questions. For example, what platforms are you making a game for? You should work backwards from a platform. For example, if you are planning to release on console and one of those consoles is Switch, you should probably work backwards from Switch because that has different hardware requirements that are lower than other platforms. If you're deciding which engine to work in, Godot is very popular these days, and it's great. I use Godot. But other engines like Unity or Unreal have existing workflows for porting games. You need to decide where you're going to be launching your game. If you're just making like a little game to put on itch, that's fine. But if you are thinking about taking a game to market, you need to think about Steam and also other stores like PlayStation Store, Switch Store, which are relevant to your platforms that you're releasing on. You need to think about how you're marketing your game. And I'll go into this later as well about marketing. But even think about it at this stage. Like, how will people find out about your game? Are you planning on just letting it be organic? That can happen, but you're also just waiting for lightning to strike. You need to think about how you're going to be marketing your game through socials, whether you're going to use a creative strategy, things like that. And then, of course, how you plan to release your game. Playtesting, very important. Public demos, very important. Some developers find doing closed beta development is also better for their process. But basically, you want lots of people to play your game, you want lots of feedback, and you want to iterate. Steam Next Fest is something I'll talk about later in marketing as well, which is very important. And here's a little fun fact about Dredge. It seems like this cool, like, auteur, like, oh, this is the studio's sole creative vision. But Dredge was developed alongside many other prototypes, and Black Salt Studios had a little bit of a runway to develop Dredge alongside these other prototypes, and it was Dredge that they determined after extensive research that this is the game that they wanted to make because it would succeed and help them achieve their goals of sustaining their studio and making more games. And then you also have to ask yourself, are these questions relevant to your goals? A lot of what I spoke about just now is very relevant to being market successful. But you should ask yourself different questions if you are making a game for your own creative practice, for example. The main thing to remember is to play to your strengths and the strength of the medium of indie games. For example, you probably won't be able to make a fully 3D, fully voice-acted cinematic RPG experience like Dragon Age, but any one of you could be Toby Fox. You could make Undertale. You just didn't. Luella?
Yeah, so one thing I actually want to add to that as well is like that argument that you were just making, Peak. There's this kind of idea of like making a game for yourself, making a game that is art for art's sake, and making a game that is commercially viable. It is incredibly important when you're doing your market research, and when you're ideating from the beginning, if your game is I'm on double screen now, Peak, but if your game is art for art's sake, or if your game is actually commercially viable, because that will inform every single other step. And it is perfectly fine to make art for art's sake. The misstep often is people think that their games are commercially viable when really they are artistic pursuits. So be very, very careful when you're kind of allocating what role you're on. And then we're talking about who should start a studio. And this is a critical step when you're leaving university, in particular if you're starting a new studio, because more often than not, you're going to immediately look at the people that you were in the same course with, maybe even the same people that you finished your last game making, like your game final project with. This is a business choice, so I'm going to dive into that. All right, so there's two major kind of forms of relationships that you've got within your studio. You've got your internal relationships and your external. Your internal relationships are obviously the most critical, and this, like, making the right choice when it comes to working with people is important to stop you from clashing, to stop you from having stifled work environments, to continue the creative flow, but also be able to manage each other and yourselves really well to avoid ineffective work practices. When you are choosing the people that you work with, you need to take into consideration everything that we've got written here. So their work ethic and their passion and their consistency and their values. But you also need to take in mind, like, do they have dependencies? Are they getting married? Are they moving overseas? Do they have children? Do they have responsibilities? Because at your early stage of game development and when you're making a studio, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, you're not going to have funding that's going to offer them a full-time paid 100K role straight out of university that's going to make it very easy for them to live and rent in Sydney and move out of their parents' house. What you're looking at building is relationships that are built on a fundamental level of trust, because you're going to be asking the same people in the group the same question you're asking yourself, which is, are we willing to work for free on a project for 1 to 2 years before we even get to the point where we can start having conversations with publishers? So these people need to have, the same values as you do, but also they need to be able to not have the difficult constraints that a lot of people have. Like I said, do they have children? Do they have 2 to 3 part-time jobs? So you need to be kind of reasonable and fair with your expectations internally. And we'll talk about kind of that role allocation a little bit later. And then your external relationships come a little bit later, but are absolutely crucial into informing yourself how your studio is going to be best run. So you need to be having a broad network of people who have a different range of skill sets. You need to work out or establish if your relationships are going to be kind of pro bono, mentorship. Are they leadership relationships? Are they paid? Are you looking at contractors? And how to develop those relationships is really, really critical to the structure of your studio. Your studio is not an island. It is a team and community effort a lot of the time. And games don't get made without having, they don't often get made and are successful by one person just sitting in a room and not asking for help. Alrighty, so one thing that you have to consider is your studio identity. Please stop picking stupid names. Please picking stupid names. I cannot stress this enough. As somebody who has to type in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studio names every year over and over and over again, it makes it incredibly difficult when you have picked a stupid name. And this could be from any number of factors, right? So consider how it appears to international audiences. Don't call yourself something that is a swear word in another language. Consider the major language groups. Consider available punctuation. If you've got a lot of commas and exclamation marks, capitals, not capitals, that's going to be really difficult, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you have a level of discoverability. So if you even call yourself ABC, anyone typing in ABC is going to come up with the ABC, the Australian Broadcast. So you're not going to have any discoverability. If you call it yourself cheese pizza, you're never going to get anybody ever be able to find that on Google. If you call yourself Domino's something, you're never going to be able to find yourself on Google. So you need to be making sure that your studio name isn't dumb. Take a month to name yourselves. And then once you have named yourself, you need to make yourself a legal identity, and you need to do it very quickly. You need to start that paperwork as soon as you can. You can do this through New South Wales and New South Wales Fair Trading. It can be a bit of a lengthy process to become an entity with an ABN, and only one person in your team should be responsible for this, because the more people who have got fingers in this pie, the more difficult it actually really makes it. So focus on working out what your identity is, make sure it's discoverable, make sure it doesn't clash with anything else, and then work to make that become a legal identity. Now, one thing on names I want to mention, and how it reflects in different nations, is using the game titles for the 2 games that we've got here. So Schedule 1 is a game that was made in Sydney by TVGS. So it's a Sydney-based game. Schedule 1 in Australia means any drug that is no longer in the market. But from context, and because it's based on an American name, Schedule 1 is referring to narcotics, which is what that means in the United States. So this Sydney-based developer has decided to scrap the meaning of what it means in Australia. Obviously, the help of the context clues really makes a difference in the image, but it has based its game title on American audiences. And that is honestly what you should be doing. If your audience is Australians, you will never create a commercially viable game. Full stop. Like, that's just not, you're never going to make enough from Australian audiences to pay the bills for a year, especially like unless you're maybe a solo dev and somebody's covering your rent. Like, it just doesn't happen. And then Don't Stop Girly Pop, outstanding title. It's got punctuation. That's fine because it's really in essence to what the title is. It used to be called Insolidus, which is a Latin word, very difficult to pronounce if you just see it straight away and you're not really familiar with like Latin pronunciation conventions. But then they've retitled it entirely to Don't Stop Girly Pop, and they've got a publisher deal. So like, this is obviously not their studio names. Their studio names are great, but it's a concept of like how names works for different audiences. So if you're picking something with your studio and your team and you are having conflicts, go back to the drawing board, thinking about it again, and then remember what we have just said. All right, next one.
I just want to step in as well and say about naming things. I please avoid all the cliches in games. I'm so sick of seeing them.
Nothing with bit.
8-bit this, nothing with bit. Oh, Jesus
There's
Christ.
8-bit, there's 11-bit, there's 2-bit, there's 16-bit. No more bits. No more bits. No more bytes.
A lot of these are
no
publishers as well, it's not even games.
Oh yeah, we
All
work with them. Yeah, so then you've got allocating roles. So once you've made your entity, you're talking about your studio, you need to immediately allocate roles. And I'm not just talking about what you studied at uni and what you were really good at. Like, yes, you might be an artist in your team, and that's like magnificent, go off, be an artist. But like, some days you're going to have to put on a different cap. So if you're extraordinarily good at marketing, and I'll use our team for an example with Peak and myself at South by. Peak is exceptional artist. So Pete goes above and beyond in his role at South by to do a huge amount of our marketing, our community management, like all of our video asset creation, does a huge amount of the art for the program. But like, technically, that's because we're playing to Peak's strength, and Peak is so good at that stuff. I can't do it. It's not happening. So when you're allocating your roles, you need to immediately play to your strengths. You need to step outside of what your title is immediately, and then include these jobs. So somebody's got to do the finance side. Somebody has to do grant applications. Your studio head or your leader might be the worst at filling out government forms. So you need to get somebody else onto that. So think about this from the get-go, play to your strengths, and it doesn't always have to be somebody with a game development degree. You might have a really good mate in finance who did a finance degree who's very willing to spend 6 weeks out of his year helping you out. And then set your goals together. Think bigger than your game development cycle. It is not just about, ideation and then shipping. Ideation is a huge element of it, but that's an immediate short-term goal that gets iterated on in the long term. You need an immediate goal. You need like a 6-month goal, and you need a 3 to 5 year goal if you're really, really thinking about what your studio is going to be as a business. It's not just about the game cycle. In working with a huge amount of developers and studios, what we find is typically you've got your predominant project, and then you're like working on 3 or 4 other major ideas at any one time, and you kind of prioritize. So set your goals. We're talking like everything from the finance thing to the personnel to game development. It's the whole circle. And your long term is pretty critical in establishing who's going to be added to your team over time. And then you've got your mentors. So these can be the most important relationships that you ever have. A mentor who's got decades of experience in game development, it can be the person that saves you 6 months of agony in creating a certain mechanic within your game. They're the kind of people who can help with the finance side or make suggestions for leadership, who can step in and guide you a little bit. You'll find that most mentors are more than willing. Most people who've got experience are more than willing to talk about it. If you have somebody who you really respect or you look up to or whose job you want in the future, there is no reason you can't just cold call them, send them an email, hit them up on LinkedIn and ask them to grab a coffee and share some of their experiences with you. So like, for example, if you were really, really keen on working at Riot in the future, find somebody who works there and hit them up. And I genuinely mean that. A lot of people are very willing to share their experiences. grab a coffee, come prepared, and spend that time chatting with them. And this could lead to future jobs in the future, like, future roles in your future, and really support you. And they could be a reference that makes all the difference.
There's something I'd like to add to mentorship as well, which is something I'm noticing a lot in a lot of studios that are coming out now, are having this senior mentor type person acting as the producer in a studio, where they can leverage their years of experience with all of the business side and biz dev side of running a studio, as well as all of their professional contacts, to just kind of impart their knowledge, but also just let these young new developers work on their technical skills and learn on the job. And that's a really cool thing that I'm seeing happening more and more. And maybe that is the sort of studio structure that would work for you.
Most critical thing that you need to remember is businesses and relationships are like marriages. They are financial, they are emotional, and they are artistic, and they will determine your future well-being. And this is every kind of well-being. This is your willingness to stay in games, your willingness to be a creator, your willingness to work in teams. So you need to ask yourself before getting into a business relationship with anybody, would you let your best friend marry this person, right? So if you would be like, okay, would I let my best friend marry this person? Well, they're really late to events, and they're not very good at this, and they're pretty inconsistent, and they're unreliable. The answer is going to be no. So do you think getting into what is potentially a hugely financial relationship, is that going to be relevant to you? Like, is that helpful? So I do this with everybody I work with, and then I set my expectations with our roles based on this question. So please ask yourself every single time. Cool. And now the how. How are you going to succeed? All right, so funding is obviously the biggest question. It is the largest struggle for all developers. You can look at IGA, and you can see that the one request that all developers have is funding. Your chances of getting funded in the first 5 years with a good idea are slim to none. Slim to none. So you've got federal and state grants. If you have, after you have shipped a game, because you're not getting funded before you ship a game, after you ship a game, if you have a good idea, depending on whether it is art for art's sake or art for commercial viability, you have a relatively low chance, but still an okay chance of getting a government grant in New South Wales. And most of these stats are coming from my State of Play New South Wales game developer survey. Self-funding is typically the way to go, be it Kickstarter or through establishing a studio that starts off and does most of its work and therefore gets most of its income as a work for hire kind of relationship, or ex-dev. So you'll have a game studio that's constantly making a game, not dissimilar to Chaos Theory. They'll constantly be making a game. And then outside of that, they'll do game development work, animation, work for hire on short-term or long-term contracts. Getting a publisher, being in Australia, it's incredibly difficult. If you have a good game and you've published, you probably have a roughly 1 in 10 chance of getting a publisher deal. And then the same for venture capital and looking at different games funds. So for funding, being entirely realistic, you are going to either have to create a self-sustaining studio, or you are going to have to fund it entirely yourself. And that means working a full-time job if required and doing this in your spare time, or taking secondments, or taking time off work. So funding is going to be your biggest issue until you become, self-sustaining. Next one.
So pitching your game. Like with funding, it's not just about having a good game or a good idea. And publishers are looking for all sorts of different things, but here are some common themes. Market viability, which we've spoken a lot about here, and we're going to keep hammering it home because a lot of the Australian indie dev community is wonderful and creative and talented, but this is the question that they are not asking themselves. So when we talk about market viability, what publishers are looking for is the perceived risk of your game, which essentially boils down to, will your game sell well and make money? But then that also includes other economic factors, like if you have a large studio, that means that your studio overheads are larger, which means that a publisher is less incentivized to give you the budget that you want and need, because that would cost a lot more money. Lots of types of games, live service games, for example, are very expensive to maintain. And not that I know a single indie dev who's making a live service game, but if you were, that would be something that would be considered. Publishers these days are also looking for games that have an existing audience. It hasn't always been this way in the past, but with the market the way that it is, publishers and funding bodies are looking to mitigate that risk. So if you already have a popular game, if your Steam page is getting lots of views and wish lists, if you're viral on socials, if you have an active community, these are ways that you can prove that people already like your game and would be bringing existing markets and audiences to this publishing deal. And most importantly, you need to know what you're doing. You need to have a plan. Your budgets and development timelines need to be reasonable. You need to be asking the right questions when you're pitching and meeting with publishers. And most of all, don't lie. If you don't know the answer to something, say that you don't know, but do your research. Be informed. Luella, would you like to talk about reaching out with a demo, since you have a lot of first-hand experience from this?
Yeah, so like I said at the very beginning, this is my thing. The investment side is looking at publishers and creating a matrix every single year of what they're looking for. So every publisher is looking for a demo. If you don't, I've worked with maybe two publishers who are okay with a prototype. But even by that standard, it's like we will maybe look at a prototype if I put them in front of them and go, no, trust me, please look at it. So you need to have a demo. The one thing that you also need to have in your pitch deck is a good budget. Now, the problem with Australian games often is they are asking way below what is reasonable. So if you're providing a 3-year timeline to a developer and you're saying we've got a 5-person team and you're asking for $300,000, that makes no sense. You should be asking for $300,000 for 3 people for 3 years. So you need to get your budgets and your timelines effective. They're not going to even look at you if you're just coming to them with a concept. Don't waste anyone's time. And then you also need to consider platform, whose genre agnostic, whose genre consistent, and everything like that. So you need to come prepared. And like Peak said, don't make it up on the spot. Have a demo. Publishers are always asked for marketing, and they're always asked for localization and funding. But they do more than that. They support you. They can provide you with developers. They can provide you with a whole bunch of resources. So if you're just going to rely on them for marketing, you've already missed the middle point that Peak mentioned was, does this come with an audience? There are very few people who will get pitching, who will pitch and then get picked up instantly. I know of people who have had 300 to 400 meetings. And they've got really good experience and have actually come from working with publishers before they have locked in a deal. It can take 18 months. It can take 2 to 3 years sometimes. So you need to be prepared for that timeline as well.
And to that point about pitching way below what a publisher would expect, you may think that would make you look more lucrative to a publisher because you're willing to do more for less. But all that says is that you haven't done the research and you don't know what you're doing.
That's exactly it. It's a problem. Keep in mind as well, very quickly on this publisher thing, is that what the Australian dollar is doing. So if you're looking internationally, a lot of the work that I do is reach out to publishers that are based in countries that have got a much stronger dollar to us. Now, obviously, the entire world is coming to a bit of a kind of low recession at the moment. So keep that in mind. But when the Aussie dollar drops, that makes us sad, but it actually makes Australia a really outstanding place for investment. So keep that in mind.
So those are some general things that publishers might be looking for in a pitch, but also every publisher is different. They are different companies with different creative values and visions, and they're all looking for different things. So research, and more importantly, ask for help. There are possibly developers within your reach or your community that you could just drop a line, like Luella mentioned before about finding a mentor, and just ask, hey, how did your pitch meetings go? What were they looking for? Game developers are some of the loveliest people I've ever met. It is one of the nicest industries because we're all just trying our best, and everyone's just always happy to provide you with advice and talk about their experiences. And here's a little freebie. This is a little LinkedIn post that we came across last week, which is very handy. This is a link to 25 different pitching guidelines from different publishers, going into what they're looking for, but also these are the guidelines that these publishers are making publicly available. The information is there, and here's just a little place to get started.
So then the other how that you have to work around is business constraints. And this comes all back down to when you're allocating your roles, somebody needs to be responsible for this each of these constraints, and you can split it up as necessary. So the major cost to any developer is going to be your payroll. That is where 90% of your grant money will go. That is where 90% of your publishing money will go. So you need to be really hyper considerate of this when you start your business. You'll know better than anybody what the layoffs have been looking like over the last few years, and the concept of in the games industry survive to 2025. Most of the time that I've spent out at game events outside of South by have been about people searching for jobs. So this is an incredibly competitive and overwhelming industry for layoffs and for difficulties and for hardship. So you need to be really hyper considerate of what it looks like to be running sustainably and running your costs sustainably. The other side of things is going to be your tech and your tech subscriptions. Again, what can you really do with that? Do you really need Unity? Can you do it on Godot? There are things like that. Office expenses, if you can't make it work remotely, then you can't make it work. I know about 4 studios who are downsizing massively at the moment and moving their studios or removing them entirely so that they can all work from home. You do not need a studio. If you think you need a studio, then you probably just need Dexies. Then you have to consider the loss of work hours to yourself and your teammates. Again, if you're asking somebody to work part-time so they can work part-time in your game, what is that actually looking like? Well, it's looking like what half of a wage is, and how can you accommodate for these kind of things? The promise of a game success and launching a game to great success is not going to be enough for most people to commit that much time. So again, it kind of comes back to choosing your team and the passion behind it. And then you're obviously going to have marketing costs and you have to manage your budget. Then the personnel, their availability, skill set, their communication, who's managing everybody, who's keeping everybody on task, who's onboarding and offboarding when these kind of things happen, and how are you going to manage conflict in these spaces. When you're in a creative industry, you're not just going to have business conflict and you can point to the numbers and demonstrate that it works. You're going to have artistic conflicts, and they're incredibly difficult to disassociate from and disconnect from personally. So you need to learn how to let things go effectively. Like, one of the biggest skills I've ever learned in the workplace is I've built hundreds of events, and in my experience, when you think you've got a really great idea and you know it's going to hit, and you don't have the budget for it, you don't have the ability to run it, or somebody else takes that venue slot, or somebody else takes that speaker, it's like something inside you dies. You just got to move on. So you have to learn how to deal with loss and losing massively if you're going to start a studio, because you're going to start with grand plans, and it's like cutting off a finger every single time. It is what it is. And then your other business constraints, scalability for your business is huge. If you think that you're going to be hiring 10 people in the first 2 years, it's not happening. It is not happening. Cult of the Lamb didn't expand until after they had already gotten the deal, and now they are spending money, massively expanding their team, and also buying an office building and using that money to develop. But then if you look at Team Cherry, for example, they've really kept to themselves over time. So you need to work out, is this just a 2-man band, or is this going to be a huge group? Marketing is probably the biggest thing you can ever do for your job. You've all played games that are bad, that have made money, and you've probably gone, how did this get made? Marketing can convince anybody of anything. What's the competition looking like? When are you doing your release date? With the whispers of GTA 6 coming out this year, we know that there are a lot of people who are scared to launch an indie game until they know the date of the GTA 6 launch. If you dropped a game that has a Schedule 1, for example, that's obviously going to have a very similar audience to GTA 6. If Schedule 1 launched in the same month of GTA 6, it would be forgotten. It will be 100% forgotten. It's not just about when it works for you and when your publisher says yes. It's about when other games are also launching and what that looks like. Your goal setting as a business, as mentioned before, and then the most horrendous stuff, legal, which we can go into.
And there are successful studios that have circumvented all of this and not have to think about any of these things. But for every one of those, there are thousands of studios that have crashed and burned because they didn't think about any of these things, especially with conflict, for example. All right, marketing, something that I unfortunately have to do a lot of. And unfortunately, you all have to do your own marketing. in the current climate, we all have to be our own agencies. We all have to be our own content creators, and we need to be making content. If you don't know what you're doing, hire someone who does, or learn how to do it. So I'll be primarily talking about Steam, Discord, as well as some other channels. So Steam. In the current ecosystem, Steam is your most important marketing tool for indie games. There is no point to doing any of this marketing if your Steam page isn't set up. You need a landing page to point people to. You need prospective people who are learning about your game, whether it is just a person who could be a consumer who's interested in playing your game in the future, whether it's a publisher who is looking for a new game, or whether it's someone like me who's looking for a cool new indie game to put in a cool indie showcase that might be happening in October. If I go to your Steam page and I can't contact you, I can't find out all your links. I want see this little image here? Your Steam page needs to look like this. Treat it like your website. Keep it updated. You don't even have to make a website. Just make a link tree, or you can use as a directory to link to other things that Steam doesn't
But also,
have
please
a field
don't.
for.
Please make a website. It costs you nothing.
Yes. But at the very least, be contactable. Like I said, treat it like your website. Treat it like a social media platform. Make announcements on Steam. On Steam, you want to be working on your wish lists, and once your game is out, or if you're in demo stages or playtesting, you want to also be farming reviews. Both of these things contribute to your discoverability. They contribute to the Steam algorithm. If you want to get attention on your game and you're focusing on Steam, these are the things you want to focus on. NextFest. So for those of you who don't know what NextFest is, although I'm not sure if anyone doesn't, NextFest is a Steam demo festival that happens twice a year. It can make or break a game release. You can only ever be in NextFest once. So a lot of games will release right after having their game in NextFest. And some devs who don't know any better will just put the game in NextFest just for the sake of it. This isn't to say that you need to only submit to NextFest if you are about to release. You just need to have a clear goal. If you're not planning on immediately releasing, if you just want a lot of feedback and playtesting, that's fine too. Just be aware that that's your goal and go into it with that in mind, especially when it comes to marketing outside of Steam, engaging creators to play again during NextFest, things like that. For example, Balatro, a small little game, may have won a game award last year, doubled its wish list right before launching on February 20th. And if not for that little blow up in February, Balatro would not have had the year it had. It already had a heap of wish lists before launching. NextFest made it even bigger, and then that kind of snowballed for the rest of the year until it worked up to its mobile release, and then going on to win Best Debut Indie at the Game Awards. A lot of publishers will be looking to put your game into NextFest. A lot of published games these days are in NextFest. So if you aren't published, if you're a small, scrappy indie game and you're deciding to submit to NextFest, you need to have a good reason. I don't know where I got the statistic from, but I overheard somewhere in a conversation that it's pointless to submit to NextFest unless you have at least 7,500 wish lists, which sounds like a lot, but that's where the rest of these social channels come in. So Discord is a great way to build a community, but you can't just make a Discord and expect it to grow. You need to give your community a reason to be there. You want to build an active audience on Discord, a community that cares about your game, that wants to know more about your game, that wants to talk about your game. You can use Discord I'm sure you're all familiar, use Discord to do playtest runs, collect feedback, interact with the audience, things like that. And as I mentioned before, an active Discord community is a good way to prove that your game can succeed. But none of that will happen if you just make a Discord and just hope people will start talking about your game. You need to generate discussion, start talking points. You could do little events. You can set up your server to encourage people to talk about themselves and talk about what they're working on. If it's specific to a game that's already in early access or in playtest stages, you can use it to ask people their opinion. And even if you don't care about their opinion, it's a way to engage the community. If you are including people in your Discord, you want to be communicating with your audience. You want to be posting regularly so that a game community feels active. And again, if you don't know how to do any of this, or you don't want to do any of this, then you need to hire someone who does. So many everyone in games is in 1,000 Discords, and I'm sure you are too. And the only ones that I post in are the ones that have regular engagement and that feels like a community where I can go to and ask questions, or to talk directly to devs. And then we have our other social channels, which are very important. I'll only be focusing on a few today, but this information could be inaccurate tomorrow because social media is constantly changing. Social media is very important for an indie game to succeed, and a lot of people don't do it properly. We have a lot of very successful community managers like Paige Wilson from Aggro Crab, or the Cult of the Lamb account does very well, but having this sort of irreverent, shitposty social media presence isn't necessarily the best fit for your game. It's not going to work for everybody. It works for Aggro Crab, it works for Cult of the Lamb, but there are just as many indie devs who are achieving viral success for their indie game just by posting about what they're doing. Like I'm sure many of you have come across the sledding game that is just on everyone's TikTok all the time. And this is just, and yeah, he gets silly with it, but this dev is just documenting his process, making his game. He gets lots of views on it, and I'm sure if he's ever talking to a publisher, he'll be able to leverage that really well. But with social media, it's not just about posting about your game, whether it's making jokes or just doing development updates. You also need to use these platforms to build your following. Find and engage with your audience, whether it's through threads or little like hashtag days like Wishlist Wednesday or Screenshot Sunday. But also, you need to use these platforms as one. You have to treat these platforms like an office, like a business place. So you need to be on the hunt for opportunities and be open to them. The amount of indie games that I would love to reach out to, but I can't because all of their socials are locked down and not open to DMs from strangers, which a lot of people have very good reason for this. But for example, with in the case of Twitter, after the verification change after Elon took over, a lot of Twitter accounts just became verified only for DMs, and you have to manually turn that off. So the people who have gone out of their way to turn off that setting are a lot easier to talk to. But sometimes I have to get very creative when I want to reach out to a dev. And of course, social media is also a really good place to learn what other people are doing. This is very important. It's a great way to find mentors, people you look up to in the industry and community. And it's a really good way to learn about how to succeed. You can read a lot of threads that go viral on indie dev social media. A lot of people are on Blue Sky now. Some people are still on Twitter. And also, you have to use LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I thought I could go my whole creative professional life without having to do LinkedIn. And since starting this job like 3 years ago, I unfortunately have become LinkedIn pilled. I don't like posting there, but you got to do it. It's important. Something I will say is that I find like LinkedIn for games feels a bit more chill than just general LinkedIn business. So you can be a bit looser. I've seen some of you on LinkedIn. Great job. You're all doing good time. Keep doing what you're doing. All right.
Can I say something really quickly on the marketing thing?
Mm-hmm.
You need to time it well. So if you are just starting your development journey, then post about the development process. Start it at the right time. If you want to start after you've gotten a demo available, that's fine too. But really think about when the marketing thing is going to kick in for you. If you're just posting nothing or the same thing over and over again, you feel one note and that's boring. You're going to lose interest. People are going to either expect the same stuff constantly. So it's important that you do it at the right stage of development or in the right stage of production so that by the time you get to launch, you have an active community. Additionally to that, ship your game. Ship your game. Peak, how many games do we know that every time we see them or hear about them, we go, ship it, just ship it? Like, there's probably 30.
Many such cases. A lot of games, indie dev is hard, especially when people have lives going on. But if you never release your game, you can never move on to the next one.
Yes, I know they're like your babies, like any artistic project, any major thing that you're going to put your heart and soul and identity into. But marketing, a lot of the marketing that is around shipping your game. You are never going to have enough wish lists. You are never going to have a big enough network. You are never going to feel ready. You just got to do it. It is like you're only holding yourself back. Ship your game. commit to it, commit to your audience that you're going to ship that game and stick to a deadline. You'll find that most indie games will give you a upcoming or a 2025 as their date or a Q3 2025. And you're like, mate, just be realistic, give us the year and then hone it down, give us a date. Because then other people can work towards that. Your community can work towards that. You have goal setting that you can achieve at that certain point. Ship your game. Wish I could tell everybody that every day.
Very important.
Okay, then resource management. This is entirely determined on how successfully you've allocated your roles and if the people are accountable for the resources that you've got. So you need to be ensured that you are doing a reasonable amount of work in progress evenings or breakfasts or mornings, whatever, to connect your entire team and to update everybody on what you're doing. You can use management software for this, but at this stage of creating a studio, I never want to tell anyone that you need to have a $800 subscription every year to a management software. You can use Google Drive, you can create calendars, you can use anything that you need, but you need to keep yourselves accountable so you're managing your resources effectively and somebody is keeping track of that within either an allocated budget or an allocated timeline. Monthly reporting can be the best option for it if you're working remotely or if you've got other jobs that everybody is doing. You're all uni students at the moment, or we've just been uni students. I will never not be uni student brained. If I don't have a due date to work towards, I'm never going to do anything. I'm absolutely the kind of person who would never achieve anything if somebody didn't give me a deadline. So monthly reporting is important. And the only way you will be able to achieve stuff and be accountable is absolute brutal honesty. You have to be honest with each other. Again, would you marry this person? Would you let your best friend marry this person? Brutal honesty is the only way that you're going to be able to effectively manage your time and your personnel and your costs in a small studio setting.
And on that, speaking to that deadline pressure, a lot of games that have a publisher or a funding body have the luxury of also having a person whose job it is to tell them that this game needs to be released by this date. A lot of the games that are perpetually in development forever are from devs who are not published, who are just waiting for that perfect moment. So if you don't have a person telling you that this game needs to be released by X, then you need to be that person. You need to figure out your deadlines and your timelines and release when you can. Obviously, that's not always possible. Things happen, things blow out. But if you've planned things correctly, then you should be able to work that into your development timeline and figure out when you can launch. And hopefully it's not too different from what you had planned. Networking. I want everyone to, I know you're all muted, but I want everyone to say this with me. Network is important. Networking is fun. If you don't agree with the statement, then make it. If you don't agree with the statement, then make it something that you agree with. A lot of people hear the word networking and they think this, sitting in a room talking about business. But networking is also just hanging out with other game devs in cowboy hats. There's lots of ways to do networking. Just being in a room with a bunch of other game devs and just having chats, one, is networking, and two, so helpful for your creative practice and your creative pursuits, and also just business. You'll make connections. You'll find people who are looking for freelance work who can help you out with your game. You'll find people who can employ you and bring you onto a studio and teach you things. So many developers, especially in the larger cities like Sydney and Melbourne, have this mentality of, well, I just need to disappear, work on my game quietly, and not talk to anyone. And there are a lot of reasons to do this, because sometimes you want to just sit down and just get the work done without all the distractions of all this other stuff that isn't making a game. But it's so important to be a part of the community and part of the industry, because the people who succeed are the people who make those connections. I wouldn't be in this job if I just hadn't had a bunch of different lucky chance meetings in the past couple of years that all led to me being in this role. And many people in games are the same. So what does networking look like? You can do that at all variety of in-person events here in Sydney. A small little event called South by Southwest Sydney is happening this October. That's a great place to network. But also this weekend in Parramatta, Alt Games is happening. There are talks which are paid, but most of the program is free, running from 10 till 3.
I'll be there. Come say hi.
I'll be there. Come say hi. But go check out some cool games. More importantly, talk to people. Network, make connections. We've also got Noble Seed, also love to do events in person all the time in Sydney. They're great, such a great way to meet people. And of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with Beer and Pixels, and that counts as networking. Digitally, there's also plenty of ways to network, which is mostly just coming down to being active in community discords. I'm sure you're all familiar with the one that you're currently in, but Games with Wings in Sydney is also a great place to chat and meet other devs and talk about your projects. I'm just using Code NZ there as an example for the other communities that live out there. But there are plenty of digital spaces to network, even doing things like game jams. That aren't necessarily within your communities is a good way to meet new people and network and make new connections. The beauty of the internet is that you don't have to be in the same place. So why just stick to your local community? There are a lot of really cool indie dev communities from all around the world, and you should be a part of them.
Also, on that note, one more time, I'm also going to say this. There is no reason that you and your mates can't jump in a car and go down to Melbourne. Go to a PAX, go to a meetup there. Massive Monster Run events down there all of the time, and they do their own little whip, so you can bring a laptop and you can get feedback and you can meet Julie and the team. Like, go to Melbourne, see what it's like. Consider moving there. You'll be better off financially. Or stay here and run the gauntlet, but only if you like your family and they'll let you live with you for free. So there's no reason you can't get in the car and go to go to Melbourne, go to Central Coast, go and see other networks and other communities and other ecosystems. It's good for you, and it is good in the long run for your career.
And building on that note, also, again, not everyone can afford to travel or have the opportunity to, but I think it is so valuable, especially in Australia, to go and see what the other indie dev communities like, especially in the smaller cities like Perth and Adelaide. Sage is Adelaide's big gaming festival event that happens once a year. It's only like a 2-day thing. It's mostly funded by the South Australia Film Corp, but it is such a great opportunity because it's such a small scene and such a small community. You can just go and you'll basically meet everyone. And you'll find, like I did, that these smaller, close-knit communities are actually doing things way better than all these disparate, siloed communities in places like Sydney and Melbourne. They just think that they're missing out on the big city experience. But they actually, I think, are going to be in a really good position in the next couple of years. South Australia especially, they all know each other. They're all friends. They work in each other's games. They have a really solid game making foundation, and you should all go and learn from it.
Yeah. Oh, and if you as well, sorry on the network thing, there's communities. So like as Peak mentioned, there's the gamers, there's women in creative technologies, there's community groups and disability groups as well. So if you're somebody who's in a different kind of group that's not just like a mainstream, I just want to be a game developer, but you actually identify with somebody like women in creative technologies, join their group, join their online events, talk, speak, network. They can often platform you and give you connections that you would never, ever believe. So it's important to also find your community amongst being a game developer. And then we can go on to
networking.
Oh yeah,
networking is important. Networking is fun.
It genuinely can be. Okay, so then you got to navigate your legal requirements. Now, I am not a lawyer. I cannot give you legal advice. I can give you legal advice if it's bird law. But you need to understand that creating a business is a legal entity. You need to understand that creating art is a legal process. Everything that you do for the rest of your life is a political legal choice. So there are laws around businesses. You need to keep up to date with what's going to happen with AI regulation. Copyright changes relatively frequently. You need to understand, thank you, Ethan, you know me so well, that there are regulations around different music, different art. There's a difference between copyright and homage, and there's classification and legal requirements that you have to meet there. So again, not a lawyer, I cannot give you legal advice, but what I can tell you is that Camera Rogers Legal, for example, they run seminars and sessions for people who are looking to get free legal advice. Email an entertainment lawyer. You don't look for international entertainment lawyers. You need somebody who functions in Australia, but reach out to them. Ask them for a 30-minute meeting. Pro bono. At the same time, you have to remember that lawyers are also looking for work. So it's in their best interest to have a network. At South by Southwest Sydney, we do legal mentoring and we do law sessions about what you need to know as a game developer. So there are always different resources that you can access. So it's very, very important that you work within these frameworks before you completely go off the rails and put your business, which is your studio, at risk.
All right, and that's all we have prepared, but I'm sure there are plenty of questions. I hope there are.
Should we open the doc?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Let me just check
Where
that.
is that?
Oh, no, that's just the input. If you've got any, you can chuck them in the chat as well. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you any legal advice, but I can tell you to talk to Cam Rogers. One other thing as well I want to talk about with the legal stuff, you can talk to people with business who've got like MBAs and stuff. Kerry Hutton is a consultant. He's an incredibly good consultant. He runs courses and sessions as well. He's based in Melbourne, but he's a great help. There's also Guild Agency too, when you get a little bit bigger and you're looking for that market research side of things. There are so many resources and so many experts in the games industry. Sending an email is never going to be seen as offensive, especially if you're emerging talent. So just reach out and ask. There's no harm in just connecting with somebody and offering to buy them a coffee. So do it. Always do it. That's how I've built my network and how Peak's built his as well. All right, Cam, you got any questions?
The worst case is you get ignored.
Yeah, and like we always get ignored, and yeah, sure, it's crushed us all a little bit here and there, but you move on. It is what it is.
All right. Unfortunately, looks like no one submitted any questions. Guess it's just me.
No, that's
so.
great.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, if anyone has
so
any
good.
questions in the chat, just drop them in the chat. But also, I'm hungry. I could eat.
Yeah, I've got my salad over here. I'm ready to hit it. And you can always DM us as well if you've got any questions or if you need a little bit of guidance here or there. So we always want to hear it. Cool.
Except we have someone typing in the chat.
And they're not anymore. All right, cool. Should we leave it there?
Oh,
no.
typing again.
And if you do want a direct like suggestion as well for people to talk to about certain things, feel free to ask us. Like just DM us and be like, hey, I've got this problem about this. Who do you think I should talk to? We're always happy to give unsolicited advice. How long do you think page reset? The second you have the art.
Yeah, basically, there is nothing wrong with having a game that just that's very early on, that is still in development, that's still a years away from being made. So long as you have your art and some screenshots, that's fine. You can always update that later. But again, especially because, and this hasn't always been the case, but these days, publishers and funding bodies are looking for like that evidence. So the earlier you set it up, the earlier you can start building that following. There's literally no downside to having a Steam page up for a long amount of time. It's different when you start doing things and start marketing. That's more important to time your marketing activities with a release schedule so that you're not just edging people forever. But in terms of just making the page itself, make it now. Make it yesterday.
So it holds your game name. So like, why wouldn't you? If other people are building games that might use the same name, like you've dibsed it, do you know what I mean? So it becomes part of their market research. So do it the second you have the art and the second you've got a log line or a bio, make the pages, again, no harm.
A lot of
you can
people
always get wish lists from the very beginning.
A lot of people might feel like, oh, it's too early. I don't want people discovering my game with this in-progress art before it's ready. And it's like, if you're at that stage,
Why?
no one's discovering your game. Like, unless you're actively trying to promote your game and directing people to discover your game, it's not going to happen organically. It might, but there's going to be no impact or damage to your game or brand by making the page early.
Consisting of past portfolio. Okay, so sorry. Our employment and recruitment within this industry consisting of past portfolio. Does that mean, I think yeah, okay, like when you build a portfolio, do you include your past work? Yes, definitely. Game development portfolios can be really, really important. My suggestion, reach out to Ubisoft directly. find somebody in the Ubisoft team, it doesn't matter where they're from, and directly be like, hey, I've heard that you do student sessions, and I know that you've got an interest in university graduates. Here's my portfolio. I'd love some feedback. And lock that in. There are, depending on what kind of role that you're going for, there can be tests and exams to get into certain roles, particularly if it's heavy on the programming side. Places like Riot aren't going to hire you often without doing a test first. So if you're an artist, the portfolio is more important than it would be necessarily for a programmer. But there's literally, go to the AAAs, email them, be like, I'd love to get feedback on this, and see if they give you any.
And sorry, building on that as well, if your past experience and portfolio isn't necessarily specifically relevant to the role that you're going for within the games industry, make it relevant. This isn't just specific to games. This is just general good job advice. You need to make your employer understand why you're worth hiring. So part of that is distilling what you have done in the past into something that they will understand and will make sense to them and they will value. And if you're coming at this question from the perspective of not having that past experience or portfolio, then make stuff, do game jams.
Yeah, you're never not advertising yourself, really, unless you're a studio head and you're really settled in with your role and you know that you've got, the next 30 years of potential income. Working in tech and working in the arts crossover space and that convergent space is risky, if we're going to be honest, and I don't know how long it's not going to be risky for. So having an ongoing portfolio, your own personal website, and people that you can call on to give you that, those references, is really, really important. And I mean, you need to go beyond an itch.io page, an Esteem page if you're talking about individually promoting yourself. So, yeah. Ethan, also, who did you get a job with, if you're allowed to share? Congratulations, by the way.
Congrats.
Just use Squarespace, guys. Squarespace is easy. It costs nothing. Or HTML, that bad boy. You've got a game development degree for a reason. Build it out of anywhere.
I'll also a shout out to Portfolio Box, which is what I use for my personal, just general design and creative work portfolio. Please don't go looking for it. I haven't updated it since starting this job, but it does have a subscription fee. But it is very easy to use, especially for media stuff, which obviously you'll be doing. So yeah, there's lots of stuff out there. Your portfolio doesn't need to look a certain way. It just needs to be accessible, show off your past projects and what you've worked on, and yeah, that's it really. Too many people focus on trying to...
Oh, wait, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So too many people focus on trying to make their portfolio, again, job advice, their portfolio or resume look a certain way. But really, it's just about presenting the information that is relevant to your employer in a way that makes the most sense. So if you have digital projects, then those digital projects need to be viewable, or you need to talk about them.
I've just dropped a link to the State of Play New South Wales website and the resources side. Have a look at the resources that we've got there. That will really help inform you as for your networks and community professional development and funding, particularly for New South Wales-based developers. So things like Press Kit, made by Rami Ismail. It's a resource that allows you to build marketing and media resources for free. And then Amir Salvat's games community, it's a comprehensive list of roles that are available at the moment. And gamedev.net too, for searching for collaborators. So check out the resources page on that website, and inform yourself of the way that other developers are doing it. Also, just go to another studio's website, see what they're doing, see how it was built, see what they've got included, and kind of use that as your basis.
So I just want to drop a hot take here as well. Press Kit is very good and very accessible and easy to use. But personally, when I receive a Press Kit, if I want the Press Kit for a game and they've given me a Press Kit website, I find it a lot less useful because when I want a press kit for what I do and what I have done in the past, I need those assets immediately. And often with press kit, a lot of people don't set up like download links to all the assets, so you just have to manually download everything, or they'll embed their YouTube trailer into the press kit website, which is useful if you are just using it as a landing page for your game for media. But if someone is requesting a press kit for example, for a festival showcase, they want those assets to be readily available and downloadable. So I love just a Google Drive link, a well-formatted Google Drive with links to trailers, screenshots, footage, dated and labeled correctly. And yes, it is possible to get hired. Again, looking at my job history, it is crazy that I ended up in games.
I thought I was going to be an astrophysicist, and I work in games. So
the previous games. Sorry, please talk about your very cool job history because it is legitimately cool. But just pointing out that the previous head of games for Screen Australia is now the creative director for Grouse House. Like, career changes happen and they're wild and crazy and they're all useful.
Yeah. I think it really comes down to networking and who you know and really seizing opportunities. I used to be an astrophotographer and the head guide for Sydney Observatory, and I made tours there, and I did a bunch of podcasting production and stuff like that, and video production. And now I don't touch videos because I have Peak, but it's not, if you're not working while you're at uni, you're doing something wrong. You're missing out on 3 to 5 prime years of youth of being able to try and test new jobs. And it's fine to work in really accessible jobs, like retail and hospo and everything like that. We've obviously both done that ourselves. But in saying that, this is your opportunity to really, really just try to go for random jobs in random places and build that network, because you're kind of very much forgiven if you're applying for casual roles. It's just you can go for something completely outside of the general remit. I worked full time throughout my entire degree and then my other attempted degrees and stuff like that. And it ended me up in games, which is obviously I've always wanted to work in games. I just didn't know it was possible. And now I play games for a living and make parties happen. So pretty cool.
All right, do we have any more questions, or is it dinner time?
Fate broke.
It's got someone typing again, so...
No, all good.
Minecraft.
I need to see that movie.
I'd like to see it, but not give them any money, you know?
I want to see it in a session where children aren't going to be there. We all know what we'll do there.
I want to do it Madam Web style. I want to watch a cam rip, bootleg footage.
Yeah. I want it to be shaky cam.
That is a great question. So if you are referring to the South by Southwest program for volunteering for remote game booths, that will be probably the signups for that will probably go live in August. Yeah. So hold out until then.
But we will definitely put a message in this chat.
Yes, of course. And what is the most fun game I've played recently? Oh boy, that is. Despite someone who plays games for a living, I hate this question.
I know.
Sometimes it's because I can't talk about it. But what have I played recently?
I know mine.
Oh yeah, you go.
My favorite. I'm fucking addicted to Raft. I played 36 hours of that in 2 days. Raft is, I don't know if y'all have played it yet. It's like Minecraft, but survival, and there's a shark. And it's got lots of birds, and I'm very scared of water. But I play that a lot. It's outstanding. I'd love to know if any of you guys play that too.
I'll make my answer Raven's Watch, which I've been playing with my partner. It is like a multiplayer sort of like action roguelike. The studio previously made Curse the Dead Gods, which is a really cool game. If you're looking for like a solo dungeon crawly sort of roguelike, it's got very like crunchy combat mechanics. But Raven's Watch is really cool. It's like a co-op, like fairy tale themed action roguelike. It's really cool. It's got like a day and night timed system. So like you're just going out completing objectives until time runs out, and then you fight a big boss and you move on to the next one. Yeah, Raven's Watch, check it out.
And Raft, check it out. So good. Oh, and also Split Fiction. I just finished Split Fiction a couple of weeks ago. It's awesome, but I have a lot of problems with it too. So if anyone wants to get into the nitty gritty of that, with chat, but I'm not putting that. It's on something that's going on YouTube. But I love Split Fiction. I think it's one of the best mechanics I've ever played. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time. I hope you learned something. And if this was, if not, then tell us.
Yeah, I always like feedback. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you very much. Definitely appreciate the time presentation that you've worked pretty hard to prepare for us. But yeah, thank you once again.
Take it easy, guys. No worries at all.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you.